When people think of the ocean, they think fish. But did you know that this is so much more than that? The Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water. This makes up 82% of our territories. And yet, it was only this year when the Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement defined the Philippines as a maritime archipelagic nation or MANA. In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. I'm attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is The Way Forward. In this episode, we sit with movers, shakers, and thought leaders who will give us an overview of the untapped opportunities of our oceans and the marine resources. Welcome to The Way Forward. Join us as we discuss and investigate key economic issues impacting the Philippines and Asia. Joining us today is the President of the National Academy of Science and Technology, Dr. Rodora Asanza. Welcome, Dr. Roda. You're very well regarded in your profession. And, given your depth of insight in marine sciences, can you explain to us what the blue economy is?
The blue economy is a new platform for development. It involves the sustainable utilization of the marine resources for the good of the community. It is also for the preservation of the marine base or the marine environment.
Well, considering that you're talking about the sustainable development of the marine life as well, is there anything that governs the use, utilization, and access to the blue economy?
It's the decade of the ocean. So the United Nations has declared the decade for the people to take care of the oceans. And that means the entire humanity, because the world is really made up of 70% marine waters and only 30% land.
We tend to be focused on the land because that's where we live. What do you think the government should do then in terms of the blue economy?
We are advocating the use of science, technology, and innovation not only for the preservation and sustainable utilization of the marine environment, but all the natural endowments of the country. And so therefore, the outlook is up to year 2050. The reason is most of the strategies of the government are short-term or mid-term, meaning 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And so this is quite long-term because this is an outlook for the next 30 years. And what is emphasized in that particular document is that one blue overarching concept is the blue economy.
Do you think that a convention like the UNCLOS is helpful to the blue economy?
The UNCLOS, in a way, gave us the privilege to make use of our EEZ. I think there should be more support to the fisheries and oceans. If we really want to gain from that natural endowment and even consider our EEZ we are given by UNCLOS, we need to do something with our capacity to do it. We should harness sustainably of what we have, our natural endowments. So we need a framework really in terms of how we can take care of this living and non-living resources of this vast natural endowment of the country. I am looking at the fishermen, the poorest of the poor in the country, and they have not benefited from these vast resources.
What do you think would be beneficial to the blue economy? Do you think like a multilateral approach at an international level is something that's necessary then?
It can help, but we have to really
Help ourselves.
we have to help ourselves.
But what would be your message to the fishing sector and then to the government when it comes to the blue economy?
Well, it's good that the president is focusing on agriculture. But then agriculture may konting fisheries. Laging konti ang fisheries. It's the land agriculture always, which is good. No, I am not against it. But let us give more attention to what we can gain from the mariculture, from the fisheries, and so on. And then also for the fishermen, magsama-sama kayo at sabihin ninyo ang anong mga tulong na kakailanganin ninyo. Yung pangangalaga ng mga isda at pangangalaga ng ating karagatan, hindi lang ang gobyerno ang dapat maging responsable, tayong lahat para sa karagatan.
Thank you again for joining us today, Dr. Rodora Asanza. And thanks to people like you, we can look forward to a better future for our blue economy.
It was my pleasure, Karen.
This is the way forward. When we return, we discuss the impact of climate change and pollution on the blue economy with Deputy Director for Research from the University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute, Professor Deo Florence Onda.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Nababoy ka kita ang mga basura. Kini ba naka-apekto diha sa pag-ubos, pagpunhod sa kuha ninyo sa isda?
Nagi na siya epekto man kay nakadaot man na siya. Ang basura sa laod na daghan baga kayo manglutaw. Labi na gidugikan gibagyo, nga paglurang, naagidahan basura manglutaw, klase lang, plastic. Minus gidang kuha sa panagat sa laod. Mimikan man pud kay dili man pres ang klima god. Pagbugnaw ang silawom, wala gituna.
Nanawalan ko sa gobyerno nga kami mga gagmay managat sana matugunan na ang among mga pangangailangan o nga direkta lang sa amo mga gagmay nga mananagat. Mura po na ako ipangayo sa gobyerno.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is the Deputy Director for Research from the University of the Philippines Marine Science Institute, Professor Deo Florence Onda. So let's start off with just understanding what we have here in the Philippines. And as an archipelago, we're surrounded by waters. But can you give us a more concrete idea? How much water are we really talking about?
Our territories, at least including the extended continental shelf, make up around 82% of our territories. It means that 82% of the Philippines are found underwater. And yet, we have only really explored and understand little of it. For example, that the ocean economy, including tourism, fisheries, maritime industry, only contributed around 7% to the GDP of the country in 2018. We don't have this national policy that will put everything in one page and then dictate on how we should move forward in utilizing the resources.
Do you think that, Dr. Deo, this is something that you think is an initiative that should come from the government?
There should be an initiative coming from the national government because everything should be initiated by the government. But on the other hand, there should also be an initiative on the grassroots level, on the ground, coming from the scientists, for example. We believe that there's still a need for a separate department of oceans and fisheries. Remember that oceans actually dictate our everyday lives. They dictate the climate, they dictate the productivity of the oceans, they dictate the amount of oxygen that we breathe. Well, I think as creating a mechanism for all of these agencies to actually align. You actually get different numbers from different agencies. Remember in 2020, for example, Malacanang said, oh, let's just forget about the West Philippine Sea because we're not getting that much fisheries from it anyway. But our scientists actually said that, no, around 25% of the Filipinos are being fed by the fishes that we're getting from the West Philippine Sea. Early 2000s suggested that the West Philippine Sea is contributing 18 to 25% of the fisheries of the national capture fisheries. That's a lot. But in 2018, they said it's only 2%. We need to understand then what contributed to the decline. Is it because of the illegal fishing activities, or is it because someone else is getting the fish?
Is there an understanding right now based on how we manage our resources or living organisms?
But I think one of the recognized effects of climate change in terms of biodiversity and not just fishes is migration. We are the most vulnerable in the context of climate change because we are archipelagic.
So, based on the research that you have, what is the effect of plastic pollution, or what is the current state of our waters?
So there are predictions saying that by 2050, there would be more plastics than fishes in the oceans, right? I think 7 out of the 10 most river polluters in the world are found in the Philippines, and Pasig River actually being on top of that list. Our own studies have actually shown that in Manila Bay, you'd find around 40,000 pieces of plastics per square kilometer. And because of the wind, the current, and again, the connectivity of the oceans, many of these actually will go to South China Sea.
Can you describe to us what is the state of our Philippine oceans because of the plastic pollution?
60% at least of the plastics that we are seeing do not come from the Philippines. They're from the other countries in Southeast Asia, such as Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, even mainland China, Taiwan. And the problem with the Southeast Asian countries, again, is that there is no efficient ways on disposing and managing this. So we've come up with this network called Plarinet, Plastics Research Network Philippines. So the Philippines has established National Plan of Action on Marine Litter. And the idea with the Plastics Research Network is to complement what the government is doing by giving advice, guidelines, and coming up with evidence that this is the priority. This is how we should tackle the problem.
Since you talked about the effects of plastics on health, earlier we talked about macroplastics, the one that's visible to any person. But let's go to microplastics. And someone mentioned to me before that on the average, a person ingests the size of a credit card per year.
Microplastics is found almost in all tahongs that were studied all over the Philippines there. So there's an evidence that one, it is already being ingested by marine organisms.
But in terms of just immediate steps that we can take, how can we solve this problem?
We need to have a better way on how to collect and how to manage the plastic wastes. At the end of the day, it's the humans that are polluting. So we need to understand how human psyche actually works. That's what we call the nature-based solutions. The other thing is really education. How will the mismanagement of plastics will affect my livelihood?
So far, a lot of our policies have been land-based or land-focused.
We always say that it should always be a ridge-to-reef approach, meaning whatever happens on the reefs or in the mountains will always affect what's happening out in the ocean, such as in the coastal ecosystems.
Thank you again, Dr. Deo. This has been so informative. It's becoming clearer that it is possible to have a marine policy that's science-based. This is the way forward. When we return, we discuss how the private and public sector cooperate in building and improving the blue economy with former BIR Commissioner Attorney Kim Henares.
The Philippine Rural Reconstruction Movement is focusing on food security and sustainable rural development.
Pero kung minsan nakakalimutan na itong 7,000 pulo ay nakapaloob sa isang mas malawak pang karagatan na ngayon ay dapat bigyan natin ng higit na kahalagahan. Kaya ang mana po sa interpretasyon na ating pamahalaan na gusto natin ay maritime and archipelagic nation.
If we will embrace the concept that we're a maritime archipelagic country, then the next phase is that as a nation, we have to embrace that concept as well.
Tumulong na lang ang gobyerno para pangalagaan yung mga pangisdaan natin.
Huwag po nating payagan na makuha yung West Philippine Sea natin. Mas bali pagtanggol po natin para lagi na tayong maraming makukuhang isda sa dagat.
Umpisa nang sila ngayon ng isda dito, yung galunggong dito, nawala. Wala nang mahuling galunggong dito.
Sa tingin ko talagang sa solusyon doon, ma'am, dapat po sana, paalisin na po sila sana. Kung hindi man sila mapaalis, wag na po nila pagbawalan ng katulad nating mga Pilipino na mga fishermen din po.
Dapat sana, yung mga maritime o coast guard natin sana.
Kailangan po nilang ipaglaban ito. Ano man mangyari, kailangan maging atin ito dahil atin naman po ito, hindi sa kanila.
Yung West Philippine Sea, atin yun dahil nasa loob ng ating par. Ayun, talaga dapat niya kausapin yung presidente ng China para mag-usap sila para kung ano man ang mapag-usapan nila, mapalis talaga yung Chinese vessel doon sa nagbabantay doon.
This is the way forward. Joining us today is former Bureau of Internal Revenue Commissioner Attorney Kim Henares. Considering your background in finance, perhaps you can give us an idea of what you think is the potential for revenue when it comes to the blue economy?
Well, the potential's really great, no? Because the blue economy really covers a lot of things, right? It covers maritime transportation, it covers tourism, it covers the aquatic resources, which include the seafood.
Galunggong, this is something that has also been discussed in recently current events. Do you think that's a bit ironic that we have that as a resource, but then we tend to import it as well from China?
Because if you really looked at it, galunggong is really our food. And so it's sad to hear now that we're importing it when before it's indigenous to us, right?
Most of the extraction so far, or at least harvesting, when it comes to resources, marine resources, have been on fishing, so mostly on the live resources. What is your take on being able to extract and utilize the non-living resources like deposits of oil, deposits of natural gas in our waters?
Before you tap those resources, you should have already been clear in your mind how you will divide the wealth, the revenue from that. No? Because it's not the government who will tap it, it's the private sector. The other thing is that when you talk of blue economy, it's about developing something that's sustainable, right? That recurs. When normally when you tap this natural gas and oil, it's a depleting resource.
So what do you think would be one of the industries in relation to the blue economy that the government should concentrate on, or even the country, the private sector should concentrate on harnessing?
Well, I think we should harness our maritime transportation infrastructure. No? Some people say that it's more expensive to transport from Manila to Davao than Manila to the United States. I think fishery also, I think government should put up more maritime fleet that will help our fishermen. So a maritime fleet, something similar to what China is doing, that allows our fishermen to be able to fish in a more efficient manner. So you're out there, you're also monitoring that our territories are not being invaded or exploited.
Do you think that approaches like PPP is something that's worth exploring when it comes to developing our blue economy?
Yeah, I think the development of the blue economy really should be private sector driven. The government should have a plan, and then the private sector that will help to be able to contribute to it. I think the president talked about passing a land use law. So since you're already talking about the land use law, I believe that that land use law should have a component about the use of our aquatic resources, our marine resources.
It also includes reclamation, right? Decisions to reclaim.
The question should be, will we allow reclamation? Because when you reclaim, necessarily you destroy the seabed, all the corals and all those things, right?
On that note, what do you think is the value of UNCLOS and the favorable arbitral award that the Philippines was able to get to ordinary Filipinos, particularly the fisher folk?
Well, the value of UNCLOS is supposed to define every country's territory, at least from the coast, their coastal waterline, their EEZ, right? And the arbitral award is important to the Philippines because it shows that we are a nation of a rule of law. And secondly, West Philippine Sea is important because not only because it's ours, but it's part of the whole ecology, no? The blue economy, the ecology of things. And I think 80% of everything that moves in this world is done through the sea. So it's important that sea lane there should be a freedom of navigation of the sea lane. No?
But do you think a multilateral approach is more appropriate? So if we are trying to also get a level of either cooperation or recognition from China with respect to the favorable arbitral award, do you think it's worth exploring engaging other countries?
You can only, mapipilit mo lang ang isang tao na gumawa ng isang bagay kung sa tingin niya is malakas ka at hindi ka aatras. So, ang Pilipinas, kung umpisa pa lang sasabihin nyo na mahina kami, hindi naman namin kayang kalabanin ng China, ang China hindi makikinig sa atin. Diba? So, ang posturing doon is dapat hindi tayo nagsasabi ng ganyan. But you're not saying, I'm going to go to war with you. I'm just saying, I'm fighting for what is right and what is mine, and I'm finding ways to fight for it.
Thank you, Commissioner Kim. Excellent inputs. You not only brought this discussion at the economic and financial level, but also, the political and pragmatic approaches that we can take when it comes to the blue economy and our territory in general. Thank you. And this is Commissioner Kim Henares again, and this is the way forward. When we return, we discuss the value of the West Philippine Sea Arbitral Award and UNCLOS in an exclusive interview with Justice Francis Hardillesa.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Tingali kung makigdialogo ang atong presidente po sa China aron malikayan ang mga dili maayo nga mga panghitabo sa atong relasyon sa China isip mga amigo sa Pilipinas. Dialogo ang gikinahanglan. Ay mga barko nga naa sa laing nasod nga nakasud dito siguro sa Pilipinas sa mga Taiwan, Thailand nga dito ta nag-export ni hinuon nila ang kita hinuon nga mga taga Pilipinas wala hinuon ta makakuha sa kahimo sa atong isda ni palit na hinuon ta nila dito sa tagagawas nga ato man ang isda. Kung pwede maabot ang tingog dito sa kay Presidente Marcos nga moingon ko niya nga kung pwede lang ug unsay ato muoy ato ang ila dit na manghilabot sa ila dili tud ta magpahilabot sa ato ang ato ug gikuha nila ang ato atong bawion.
This is the way forward. Welcome, Justice Francis, and thank you for joining us today. A lot of people are curious about your experience in filing the arbitration case in The Hague and, your journey in being able to get a favorable judgment for the Philippines.
Thank you, Karen. Let's not forget who was the main driver. Was, of course, the late President Noynoy Aquino, because the President of the Philippines is the chief architect of foreign policy. I think I first got instructions through Secretary of CHOA to prepare within 2 weeks from February when I came in as Solicitor General. Immediately formed a small group, basically the OSG, the lawyers of the FA, and then the Office of Secretary of CHOA. We first had 3 or 4 meetings in New York. Then we got International Legal Counsel, the firm of Reichler. We won that case in part because the fisher folk made affidavits in our favor, and the Navy men brought them to the OSG. And we took their affidavits. By the first week of January, we filed the arbitration. By the time the case was heard, as you rightfully say, at The Hague, I was already, I came already to the Supreme Court. The job fell on then Solicitor General Florin Hilbay. But I attended all the hearings also. So what happened was, there was a table for China, but they were not there, so it was all of empty. That I know for a fact that Ambassador then of China in the Philippines kept on dialogue with Secretary Ochoa.
During that time, did China, to your knowledge, continue building installations in the contested areas?
While the case was in The Hague, they were already building installation.
What do you think, in your opinion, is the value then and now of having secured a favorable judgment for the country?
The value, Karen, is clarity. That is why we advise, at least the legal people, advise the President that it was worth filing the arbitration. At least we started that there is no such thing as non-dash line.
Yeah, so the strategy really was to get a favorable ruling.
There was a standoff in Panatag. If he buckled down to the pressure politically, the other country would run roughshod. The problem with China had been there for the longest time, even time of President Ferdinand Marcos. Remember, there was this standoff in Panatag where they blockaded the mouth of the reef. That is what triggered the filing of the arbitration.
Can you explain to us in layman's terms what the EEZ is?
The EEC is the economic zone. No? It was agreed upon by the countries that first met to form the treaty that is called now the UNCLOS. Okay. The EEC is an invention of the UNCLOS. So they say we give each country 200 nautical miles from the from the outer parts, okay, to make it simple. So when you have 200 nautical miles from, for example, from Palawan, we have full sovereignty. But then you have territorial sea of 12 miles, and then you have the 200 nautical miles where we have what you call sovereign rights.
What is the difference between sovereignty and sovereign rights?
Sovereignty is like, to put it in simplistic terms, if we are sovereign over Luzon, because Luzon is our territory. So we have full civil political control, the Philippines, over Luzon. Sovereign rights is over the area outside of the territory. Then you have 200 nautical miles outwards towards the sea. We have the right to exploit the fish and the right to exploit the underground minerals.
What would be your message to the fishing communities and to our government right now when it comes to just maintaining that momentum when we won an arbitral award?
So he has expressed already that he is embarked on an independent foreign policy. So we will wait, and we hope that the Department of Foreign Affairs sees it through. Okay. Well, my message to our fisher folks is that I think the Filipinos would be there to help them, and the specific ways that we can help you apprehend the poachers, make it more difficult for them to get out on bail. Increase the penalty. If you ask me, I would wish it to be declared a heinous crime.
Thank you, Justice Francis. That certainly makes us hopeful about the future of our country. And this is the way forward. Did you know that the Philippines' exclusive economic zone covers an estimated 2.2 million square kilometers of water, making up 82% of its territories? In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is the way forward.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation, or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.
Sa pool, hindi maabot na sasapat yung aming kinikita dito. Dahil hindi naman pang araw-araw, minsan makakahuli, minsan wala.
In this three-part special, we explore what the blue economy is about and dive deep into the Philippines' unexplored potential. We sit with movers, shakers, and thought leaders who will give us an overview of how critical the ocean is to our food security. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno, and this is the way forward.
PRRM has spent over 7 decades in rural development. We were biased in favor of farmers, and the fisherfolk told us, food is not just rice, it is also fish. The Philippines is more than 300,000 square kilometers of land. Our exclusive economic zone is 2.2 million square kilometers. We are the 15th largest fishing nation in the world. The Philippines is a maritime and archipelagic nation or MANA. Mana natin ito. We must defend it.